Good afternoon, everyone. We're good, Connor, right?
We're good to go. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thanks everyone for joining in for today's edition of the State Technical Committee. We will do introductions and we'll start with the group here in person, and then we'll go in order for those that are joining us online. So with that, I'll go ahead and kick things off. Rob Losswell, Conservationist with NRCS.
I'm Tim Kalkowski. I'm with the Nebraska Grazing Lands Coalition.
Nick Stripp with USDA.
Kent Zimmerman, Nebraska DNR. Dan Ross, Nebraska Department of Environment and Energy.
Brandon Beatty, Department of Environment and Energy.
Albert Trailer, Department of Environment and Energy.
Al Junkie, Nebraska Pork Producers Association. Dad Painting, Grain Sorghum.
Dan Ritterboys with the Lower Loop NRD.
Tammy Timms here with NRCS.
And Bill Armbrust, I'm with the Nebraska Farm Service Agency State Committee.
Jenny Prince, Pheasants Forever and Quail Forever.
Eric Zock, Nebraska Parks Commission.
Brad Sonson, Assistant State Conservationist Programs.
I'm Connor Ward, Equip Program Manager for NRCS.
Left around to me. I'm Tammy Nordman. I am the admin for the programs and soils and wetland staff.
Now we'll go to those that are online here. If I can call out the name, and then if you can turn on your video camera, that'd be great. If it's functioning, and introduce yourself. So first up, I believe Jeffrey Ablin.
Yep, a Beglin. U.S. Forest Service, Nebraska National Forest, Shatter, Nebraska.
Great, thank you. Brad Lubin.
Yes, good afternoon. Brad Lubin here, University of Nebraska Ag Economics Department.
Great, thanks, Brad. We've got Buffalo Bruce.
This is Bruce from Western Nebraska Resources Council.
Great, thanks, Bruce. Dave. You're muted, Dave.
Yeah, sorry about that. David Potter, Lower Platte South, NRD.
Potter. Sorry, Dave. Eigenberg. We lost Dave online. We'll keep going here. Neil.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Neil Domini, NRCS, work with partnerships. Good to see you all.
Neil. James.
Yeah, good afternoon. James Huntwork, NRCS area conservationist for Central Nebraska.
Thanks, James. Jana.
Good afternoon, everyone. Jana Ingerson Laws, and I'm a program specialist at the Farm Service Agency State Office.
Thank you. JC.
Good afternoon, everyone. JC Schaefer, Nebraska Cattleman.
Okay, who is the next one up there? Kelly Center for Rural Affairs. Kaylee.
Oh yeah, hi everyone. This is Kaylee Olson. I'm a policy associate at the Center for Rural Affairs up in Lyons, Nebraska.
Okay, thanks. Kelsey.
Yeah, hi, I'm Kelsey Werman. I'm with Pheasants Forever and Quail Forever here in Nebraska.
Thank you. Kristen.
Hi, I'm Kirsten Bailey. I'm with the Center for Rural Affairs. I'm a senior project associate.
Thank you. Pat with FSA is up next.
Pat, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Pat Lechner, Price Support and Conservation Program Chief with the Nebraska Farm Service Agency.
Thanks, Pat. Ryan Lodge.
Hi, I'm Ryan Lodge, Working Lands Coordinator with Pheasants Forever.
Question.
Trumpy, she's muted though.
Okay.
We're gonna have to have.
Okay, Marcia, you're unmuted. We'll move on to Levine Moore with FSA.
Yeah, it's Levine Moore with the conservation section with FSA. I'm a conservation specialist. Thank you.
Up next is Nebraska.
This is Kara Cooney with Nebraska Leica.
Nichols.
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. This is Jeff Nichols. I'm the state grazing specialist with NRCS, coming to you from North Platte this afternoon.
Thank you, Jeff. Paula Sue?
Yep, Paula Sue Steffen. I'm with the FSA State Committee. I've signed in twice and my name won't show up. I don't know what.
Thank you, Paula. It's Mary on the spot.
I think you're calling on me, Rob. Mary Reese with the West area with NRCS here in Nebraska. You just met James a few minutes ago. I'm his counterpart out here in North Platte.
Thanks, Mary. Rich Walters.
Good afternoon, everybody. Rich Walters with the Nature Conservancy, Nebraska.
Thanks, Rich. Craig Romeri.
Yes, hi there. This is Craig Romery. I'm an environmental specialist with the Nebraska Department of Agriculture.
Get the names down sooner or later, right? Royce. Keep moving. We got a Schmidt with the MNNRD.
Mike Murphy, Chandler Schmidt.
Great, thank you. Scott Nelson.
Yeah, hi, this is Scott Nelson with the Little Blue NRD down in Davenport.
Scott. Tatiana.
Hi, everyone. I'm Tatiana Davila, Source Water Protection and Wellhead Protection at NDEE.
Terry J.
Terry Jules, Guard Lower Niobrara NRD up in Butte.
Thank you. And Britt. It's online.
Hi, everybody. Britt Weiser with NRCS here in our state office in Lincoln.
Thanks, Britt.
We have people on the phone. I don't know who the phone numbers are, but
We have some that dialed in via phone. If you'd like to introduce yourself, that'd be great.
one at the very top, but I can't.
If anyone wants to introduce themselves, they didn't get a chance, go ahead and do that now. Okay, we'll keep moving along. Thanks, everyone, for doing that introduction. A few things I wanted to share briefly. I know Brad will hit on this here in the next agenda item, but it's exciting to have the first meeting for the Urban Ag Subcommittee, part of the State Tech Committee that they met back on August 26th. So that's very exciting. I know, again, Brad's going to go into the details a little bit specifically to that subcommittee, but it's great to have that stood up, that subcommittee stood up. And I know it's been been a little bit in the making, so that's exciting to have that going. And also, I know Brad will mention that our plan is to rejuvenate, if you will, get the another subcommittee started back up again, water quality, surface or source water subcommittee. So that's we'll talk a little bit more about that today, but wanted to share that with everyone. Here we're in the final stretch of the federal fiscal year, 3 weeks and counting down to get all the final last items obligated, contracts obligated, the agreements signed, all that fun stuff. So I want to thank all the staff for working hard to get us through here to the finish line. It's much appreciated across the state. We did, on a side note, and Brad may touch on this, but we did go out and unfortunately with another wildfire that was out in western part of the state through a funding sign-up period. We did get additional funds to address some of the wildfire applications that we had specifically out in the western area, Scottsbluff. So just wanted to share that we are working still hard to get contracts obligated specifically tied to the wildfires that's been happening here this year in Nebraska. A few deadlines that I wanted to share with partners. Hopefully this is all on your radar, but I wanted to repeat it just to make sure. September 22nd, we have a deadline for partners to submit the proposals through the Grazing Lands Conservation Initiative, or GLCI. So that's fast approaching here, coming up soon. Also, September 22nd, another deadline for partners for the Conservation Innovation Grant. That's the On-Farm Conservation Innovation Trial Program. So that's the CIG, but specifically talking about the on-farm trials, that deadline for partners. Another one, the next day, September 23rd, there is proposals of applications for the Wetland Reserve Enhancement Partnership proposals. That is another deadline coming up, September 23rd. Sean McVeigh would be a good point of contact if you have questions on that. And also October 11th is any partners interested in applying for the Conservation Innovation Grants, the CIG Classic Program. Again, those funding announcements have been released. So with that, to stay on schedule, we will turn it over to on the agenda. Hopefully you all were able to get the agenda that was emailed out in the invite, but we have Brad up with the conservation program update.
Ready, Brad? Yep. All right, well, thank you. Thanks everybody for showing up. September. We're doing hybrid meetings now for the state tech, and I think we're learning a little bit more on our technology, making that work a little bit, but we'd like your feedback on how that works. But like Rob said, thanks for coming, and for those online, if you have questions, we're going to be monitoring. And if you want to ask a question, raise your hand. We'll stop and we'll address it. Or you can just unmute and ask a question that way too. So, so I'm going to give the end of the year kind of the update on where we are with all of our obligations and some things we still have to get accomplished. So it's going to be a lot of review of where we are, and so I'm going to do that, give an update of the funding and then at the end, I'm going to kind of go through and hopefully do it fairly quickly. But I thought I would run over the local work group recommendations one more time. And the last time we met, there were still some that we were still working on. We have done a lot of work since June with the technical specialist and looking at program policy and all those things. And so I think we we've got an idea of where we need to go with those recommendations. So I'm just gonna throw those out there as those final recommendations. And then a little bit on the urban ag at the end, like Rob said, so. Okay, so CSP. Again, just a summary. So where we're at currently in August, we have 1,877 CSP contracts on a little over 3 million acres for $127 million obligated. And the CSP, if we were going to run a report today, that would be more. We're in the final stages of obligating contracts, and we got a little bit of ways to go, but that's where we were last week. So our allocations, kind of an update there on CSP. We ended up with 16.1 million for CSP Classic. And so we almost doubled what we started with on CSP Classic. We were able to get some increased allocations. And due to the number of applications we have and have contracts ready to go, we're in good shape to receive additional funding for CSP. So we received some of that money late, and so they're still working on that. The renewals, 6.6 million. And then the Grassland Conservation Initiative, we just have a few applications for that. Those all got funded. So as far as applications, again, we had over 1,200 applications for CSP contracts in Nebraska. And we're projecting this, that we will be able to fund only about 144 with the funds we receive. So CSP is highly competitive. I've said it, many times that only the best of the best applications are getting in, and we don't see that changing too much in the future. We had 250 applications for renewal. So again, with CSP, once you get a 5-year contract, you have an option to renew that contract, but now it's a competitive process. Years ago, if you wanted to renew, it's pretty much automatic. So a very small percent of those got approved, and then all of our GCI contracts got approved. So again, I thought I'd touch on the change that we made this last year to set up fund pools by NRD this year, and that matches up with our EQIP funding. And it looks like we're getting a better distribution of CSP contracts across the state as a result. We now have 52 counties which have at least one CSP contract in them, and so that's up about a dozen what we had before. So that's worked, and I think we're going to move forward with that same setup in the future.
Battery's dying.
So it's kind of a summary. What's the most popular practices in CSP and activities? So prescribed grazing is by far the most popular activity in CSP. Pest management, nutrient management, forest harvest management, irrigation water management, cover crops. That's kind of the top 6 practices and enhancements and that get through CSP here in the state. I'll touch on the easements just a little bit, and this is a lot of review from last time, but a couple updates. We had 18 eligible applications and 2 REP applications and 2 ALE applications that we started the year with. Can you just advance it from here? Okay, so we started out with a little over $2 million allocated to the state for WRE, a little over $1 million for REP, 1.9 million for AO. And then we get an allocation to manage these easements here in the state. And from those allocations, we were only able to move forward with 3 wetland reserve easements, 412 acres. And unfortunately, we just had one that canceled out at the last minute, which is unfortunate. We get right down to the end. So again, if we could get some more allocated to us, we could do more easements. We got the applications for it. One REP application we moved forward on, and that will go through. We're still working on the floodplain easements from the 2019 floods. It's a long process, takes a lot of time, make decisions. So out of the 21 applications, there's 7 which might go through to get recorded. There's one ALE application on about 3,350 acres. That one is moving forward. That one's up in the northwest part of the state. And everything's looking good there to get that one recorded. The other application we're working on, just under 6,000 acres, and that one is getting close to getting recorded as well. Just a few things to finish up on that. We'll get that recorded. Reminder, the applications, it's on a year-round basis. So we will take the applications, but we're going to align the easement applications with our other cutoff dates. I'll cover here in a little bit of November 18th. So if anybody's interested in an easement, come on in and make sure you get that application in by November 18th. But if they don't, we'll take the application year round. So that's for all of our easements, WRE, REP, AL, and AL. And again, the process has changed a little bit for the allocations. For them, we're going to use appraisals to get the values again. And we'll probably continue to use appraisals, until we're able to fund more applications. There is still the GARD process that we've covered before, but with this few easements, money to be able to obligate this few, we'll probably continue to do the appraisals. That's a plan again for FY23. So EQIP, in 2022, we obligated 931 contracts on a little over 400,000 acres, obligating about a little over $26 million. And this number will increase. We're still obligating a few EQIP contracts. That's where we were as of last week. So just a little bit of summary. I won't go into a lot of detail on this. So as far as applications and contracts, hopefully you can download the PowerPoint. You can look at this in more detail. But in 2022, this column shows where our original allowance, and I'll cover this a little bit too, kind of how we split out our funding. That's where we started. And then based on the applications we got for each one of our state fund pools, and the resulting contracts is over there on the right. So to point out just a couple of them, so the WIN fund pool, originally in just this pool at 1.4 million, ended up obligating 1.7 million in just the WIN part of that, 53 contracts. The Great Plains Grassland Initiative, which is combined with the WIN to get our 10%. You can see that there. So we wrote about 21 contracts under that. That just kind of gives you an overall picture of what we did in FY22. I'll touch on, we have some targets that we have to hit with our funding. And so our historically underserved participants, we have 10, where we have to obligate 10%. And we've always exceeded 10% by quite a ways. And this year was no exception. And so we obligated 188 contracts. A lot of those are beginning farmer ranchers. So we're over 20% in HU. Total contract acres, 65,000, and then the funds that were obligated. So those that count towards the HU, limited resource, beginning farmer rancher, socially disadvantaged, and veteran. Wildlife is also a 10% target. We have to allocate 10% of our funds to wildlife. And so we've met that target, 11% on wildlife. A breakdown of the wildlife, the wind practices for the FY22 practice summary. And this goes top to bottom on obligations. So brush management is at the top for what we funded. Forest stand improvement came in second, wetland restoration, and on down the line. So again, this just for your reference, kind of where those funds went. This is a map of where those wind contracts are located in the state. It might be kind of hard to see, but they're color coded, the little diamonds. So in FY22, the red diamonds are where the wind contracts are located. And it's FY21, yellow's FY20. So just to give you kind of a visual of where those contracts were. Livestock target is 50% nationally, or we have to meet what we did the year before. And so we're in good shape with our obligations towards livestock. We're at 65%. Our livestock are tied to livestock. Last year, we were at 62% here in the state. So doing good on the livestock as well. CIC, the Eclipse CIC, is a quick summary of that. In FY22, the practices that were the most popular, conservation crop rotation, cover crops, nutrient management, prescribed grazing, and I'll talk about CIC in a little more detail about what practices are eligible in just a little bit. That's what we did in 22. Source water protection. This is another one of those 10% targets for every state. So back in 2020, we had a source water protection committee, a subcommittee, where we developed the priority areas within the state. And I would say there's consensus that that's working pretty well. So the wellheads are in red. Those are the top priority. Water quantity management areas, those are medium priorities with the phase 2 through 4 groundwater management areas. So we're going to move forward into 23 with this same priority area. But I will mention here that we're putting together a subcommittee. Rob mentioned we're going to revamp that. We're going to have a source water protection and water quality, a subcommittee. We're still trying to get that put together and hoping to get something ready early October that we can start meeting. So that's where we'll take a look at our priority areas, our practices. We're going to try to combine the water quality aspects of that too. And so anyway, we'll look forward to that committee and doing that review, get that going. So the practices in 22, source water protection. So a subsurface drip, SDI, and sprinkler systems, center pivots, irrigation water management. And, you know, some of the support practices, for crops and nutrient management. You know, we get a fair amount of that going on. There we go. So here's a summary from FY20, but this is an overall, you know, through this year, where the practices, kind of where we're at, but this is by count. So irrigation water management, there's 325 instances of irrigation water management, source water protection, then crop rotation, cover crops, and irrigation practices are popular. And here's another map that Connor put together to show where the source water protection contracts have been located. The dark purple, and it's kind of hard to tell, but FY22 is where we funded the contracts. I'll also mention the disasters a little bit in FY22. Unfortunately, we burned up in this year a lot. So we've had some disaster funds to offer some assistance with the wildfires, but this map, I think, does a good job of just showing how widespread the wildfires were across the state. And of course, there were many more, but these were just the larger fires that happened in the state. So, so we offered some assistance, prescribed grazing, and this was deferred grazing to allow those areas to recover that were burned, and then cover crops on any cropland that got burned. They were eligible. So these were the only two practices which were eligible. You know, there were other options, you know, for funding assistance, you know, for fences and those kind of things. This is what we did. And so the summer and fall of 21 fires, we obligated 14 contracts for that. And there was the Road 739 fire that we had a specific sign up for that. Did 28 contracts. And then we came back with a third round of wildfire disaster funding, and we just made it statewide. And so there was some criteria, you know, that if you're involved in one of these identified wildfires, you were eligible. And so when I did this report, we had 42 contracts for the statewide, and that number will increase by at least 9. And so hopefully that provided a little bit of assistance out there. I know it was tough for those producers. You know, they'll get a payment to defer, but then they had to have a place to put the cattle, and then feed sources is another challenge. So anyway, we're hoping this helped just a little bit. Effort. Okay, so then here's an overall summary where we stand in the state. The total active equip contracts of all years, 2,685 on 1.1 million acres, and there's 87 million still obligated into those contracts. So that's total. And then the total, here's kind of a picture going back to the 2014 Farm Bill through the current obligations. The top 25 practices. And so you can see by obligation, cover crops is the top funded practice in the state. And livestock pipelines, center pivots, crop rotations, terraces, and on down one. So that's by obligation. And if you go by just the count, the number of practices, again, cover crop is right at the top. Irrigation water management is the next most popular practice that we put into equip contract. Watering facilities, the tanks, brush management, fifth on the list. On down the line. So that kind of gives you a snapshot of where the money's going with our equip contracts here in the state. So moving on to 2023, here again, a lot of this is some of this is repeat from the last meeting we had. But I mentioned all of these again for FY23, source water protection, wildlife initiative, and HU are going to be required 10% set aside of our EQIP general allocation. And EQIP CIC is just 5%. But that is one that if we don't hit the 5%, we can move those funds into other categories. And livestock at 50%, as I mentioned. So the fund pools that we've talked about and moving forward in 23, these are the statewide fund pools that we'll be implementing. The Nebraska Great Plains Grassland Initiative, Working Lands for Wildlife in the Sandhills, and those two, are repeat. Had those in 2022. Working Lands for Wildlife Quail is a new initiative, and Jenny's going to be talking about that here in a little bit. And so we'll be adding that. Urban and small scale agriculture is another fund pool. And this one is renamed from High Tunnel. Every state, at least up until FY22, has been required to have a High Tunnel fund pool. So we're going to use that slot, that fund pool, and that's where we're going to put our urban and small scale agriculture assistance funds into that slot. Organic and energy, those are two other mandatory fund pools, cap plans, AFOs, and tribal. And then the disaster, as a reminder, every state is required to have a disaster fund pool for when we have floods and fires and those kind of things. We are now required to match any additional funds that we would get from headquarters. We can request funding, but we have to match it dollar for dollar. And so it's a little tricky to know what that number should be, but we'll talk about that. So source water protection, as I mentioned, we're moving forward in 23 with the same priority areas as we had in 22, actually from FY20. Here's a list of practices with, these are the primary practices which are eligible for the source water protection. And this will be part of the discussion when we get our subcommittee set up again as far as which practices we want to target. CIC, quick reminder of EQIP CIC. This is a stepping stone. It's intended to take producers to a higher level of implementation of practices and ultimately get them eligible or qualified for CSP. So our priority resource concerns, we opened this up in FY22. Initially, it was a soil health focus, our CIC, but we then opened it up to degraded plant condition and water quality and quantity. So it's a pretty all-encompassing initiative where we're setting funds aside. So the practices which are eligible for CIC, again, these are going to carry forward. We made no changes from FY22 CIC. So then the allocations, we've got all these initiatives, and so we've had to make decisions on, where are we going to put the money. So this is where we're at, and this is just an estimate, for the 10% purposes. Traditionally, we've been receiving around anywhere from 22 to 25 million in equip. Just traditionally, that could change. That could be more, that could be less. So starting with 24 million as a placeholder, our urban and small scale agriculture fund pool, we're going to start with 500,000 into that. And so that will come off the top of our allocation. Our wildlife initiative, our 10%, is, 2.4 million based on, that's what we get. So we're going to tackle it with 3 different initiatives to try to get our 10%. So we're starting with Great Plains Grassland Initiative, 1.2 million. That's what was agreed to last year. That's where we started off the top for Great Plains. We're going to stick with that for Great Plains Initiative again this year. But then the quail and the wildlife initiative practices, count towards that. So we're going to put 900,000 into wind, 1.2 into Gpgi, and 300,000 will put towards the quail initiative to start this year. So then the HU 10%, we keep some in reserve just to match overruns and things like disaster match and those kind of things. AFOs, we've been at $1 million for many years now. That could be more, but we're started $1 million. That worked out pretty good this year. The cap plans, 200,000 organic and tribal, just a little bit. Then the Sandhills Working Lands for Wildlife, 100,000. That also counts towards our wildlife fund pools. And so disaster, that's one. This last year we put $1 million into the disaster fund pool. We struggled with that. We had too many wildfires. So we're gonna bump that up a little bit to 1.5 million set aside. Hopefully in 23 we won't have any disasters, won't have any floods, won't have any fires. And if that's the case, then at some point, probably late in the year, we'll just redistribute that out into the other fund. Source water protection, equip CIC is a 5%, 1.2 million. So we set those funds aside, those funds. So that being the case, there'd be about 11.5 million, which would then go to the 23 local funds, local work groups. So, and then they've got, their process to prioritize those funds when it gets to the local work group. So, in addition, there are some national initiatives which we have access to in the states. So the Joint Chiefs this year, we won't be receiving any funds for Joint Chiefs. The Joint Chiefs expired. And then Water Smart, that is just a small amount of funds. I think Tammy will get into these a little bit more detail, right? And then NWQI, we requested 1.2 million this year for NWQI. Again, that's just a request. We don't know what we're going to get for these, but that all adds into our total allocation at the end of the day. So the NWQI is going to be one of those where we'll be using our subcommittee, our source water protection and water quality subcommittee, to dig into the water quality aspects, which fit into our NWQI decisions moving forward. And so, so I'm really looking forward to having those discussions, to where do we need to target NWQI and those kind of things. So that's going to be a big item on the list for that meeting. So thought I'd put this up to the wildlife practices which ring the bell towards our 10%. Here's that list. And so if any of these practices are put into any contract any of the equip general contracts, they count towards our 10%. Or any contract which is in one of our authority areas, count towards our 10%. So local work group meetings, I'm going to run through those and just give you a rundown of, this will be a repeat for everybody. We've talked about these, but we didn't have the final decisions yet the last time, so I'll kind of hit on those. So the pumping plants, there was, the scenario just didn't match reality and what it was costing to renovate those pumping plants. So we did some work on revising the scenario to remove some duplicate payments. So I think we're on track to make that fit. There were several requests for cover crops. Wanted to change the criteria to allow for 5 years cover crops and NWQIs. We concurred with that. And so cover crops for 5 years will be allowed in NWQI watersheds and in wellhead protection areas. So we'll make sure that we make those adjustments if they're eligible. Add a scenario for 5-year payment when adopting 100% no-till into the system. We're not, that was not approved. But again, the 5 years of cover crop payments will be allowed in NWQI and high priority source water protection. Another cover crop wanted a scenario to pay extra to use a high boy seeder. And that wasn't approved, but as we looked into that, the cost was similar to the payments in a couple of scenarios we have available. So we're gonna get the guidance out to use those 2 scenarios, which will be a similar payment rate. And hopefully that'll be take care of that, make that work. Watering facility, there was concern about the payment rates that we had we have 2 situations. We have in-ground and above ground storage tank installations. So they wanted us to look at that, and as a result, the payment rates ended up being so close to the 2 that we're going to use a scenario that we have available for both situations. So that should take care of that. And so if you have an above or below ground installation, we've got a payment rate which will fit. Livestock shelter structure issue. There's an issue with materials on the shelter structures and the payment rates. So the engineering staff did some work on this and did a revision to the scenario, which would include payment for new drill stem, and it would allow for used drill stem, specifications or that. So hopefully that will help make that more feasible to install. So that's going into FY23. A request to add a new practice, annual forages for grazing, and we're going to adopt that practice, an interim practice. And so we're going to make it eligible for the entire state, not just through EQIP CIC and for all fund pools. And so, but it's going to be limited to situations where they need additional forage to offset the 12 months of deferment. And so, again, to try to address that lack of forage when they have to defer. Critical area planting. Wanted a new scenario that includes broadcast seeding. I looked at that, and we're just going to adjust the current scenarios. We'll increase those payment rates to match the higher seed costs. And maybe this is a good time to mention our practice payment schedule process. As we've talked before, that gets started in about January of every year. They look at every practice, they look at all the costs. And this year, of course, there's been a lot of inflation in that, so it's really hard to predict what our payment rates are going to be in FY23. But they will take into account, you know, the inflation, the higher cost of those practices. And we expect to get those new rates sometime about the end of September. We won't have a payment schedule in place until probably November of this year. So it's kind of a wait and see, but we have to wait until we see what they've adjusted regionally for our payment rates before we can make our adjustments locally. So that's how that works. Filter strip. There was concern that the filter strip scenarios we had did not allow for the cost of shaping those filter strip areas and that. And so we took a look at the scenario, and Corey Brubaker worked with the field to come up with 2 new payment scenarios for filter strips. And so that will help pay for the cost of the dozer work and some of the native seeding. So I think we'll take care of that concern. A couple of prescribed grazing requests that we received. This one was to add a new scenario for pastures greater than 50% rest in eastern Nebraska. We did a lot of work on that in FY22. So we took a look at it again, and it just looked like it really matches the current scenario that we have for the 30 to 73% rest. And so again, we'll look at the payment rate and try to make those match, you know, the eastern Nebraska scenario. So we can make some adjustments in that regard. And the other one was a new scenario request for deferred livestock deferment totaling for 12 months. And this actually fits a scenario that we have currently. And so we're going to move forward with that. Request for heavy use protection area. There's a new product we looked at. It's a diamond grid interlocking system. And so the engineering staff took a look at that, and looks like it would meet the specs. So that's approved. We'll be bringing that in for use in Nebraska as another option for our livestock tanks. Water well, this has come up for many years about the payment rates. The national scenarios have a payment rate for 100 foot or less to drill a well, livestock well, and then greater than 100 feet. And of course, the 100 foot and less rate was higher than the rate for 100 foot and above. And a lot of that was just you know, for the cost of, you know, setup costs and those kind of things. So we took a look at that, and their recommendation of $14 a foot was really almost exactly what the rate was for 100 foot and greater. I think the rate was, we were paying $13.53 a foot. So so what we're going to do in 23 is we're just going to have one payment rate regardless of the depth of the well. And we'll use a scenario, which is the scenario for 100 foot or greater. And then we'll have to, you know, we'll look at the payment rate and make that match. So I think we took care of that concern. Structure for water control, water meters is a hot topic, as you know, going to telemetry, red meters, and there's a lot of great stuff out there. And so what this boiled down to was, you know, with any of our programs, you know, we are supposed to use the least cost option, the least cost feasible option. And the fact is, the existing old meters meet our requirements. And so if a producer wants to upgrade on a new system, we're looking at making a new telemetry type meter eligible. We're still working on that, but at this time, we're not going to go in and replace any existing meters with the. So underground outlets, there was some questions about payment rates for different scenarios. Engineers look at that, and we think that we can just do a little better job of providing guidance to the field staff on which scenarios to use. And we're going to continue with what we have there. Nutrient management. I want to add a new scenario for 590 precision, BRI on soybeans, and found out that there are some national scenarios being developed for this situation. And so when those are developed, then we'll look at adopting them here in the state, making that available. Request from Middle Niobrara for approval of NWQI and Long Pine. That was not accepted for this year. I won't get back into all the details on that one. But again, our new subcommittee, our source water protection, water quality, that's where we're going to dig into the NWQI issue on where and how we're going to make these projects work. Expand the focal area for Gpgi to include all of Polk County. We took a look at that. This was the old map. You could see there was a gap up in Polk County. The request was to expand that. So I took a look at this and did do a modification to the map. Maybe Jeff will get into this a little bit when he talks. But so the grassland areas was included, and then the cropland areas, wasn't for obvious reasons. So we made that change. Then a lot of requests to increase payment rates or even decrease payment rates, and so we're going to consider that with our adjustments to our payment rates when we get into that in late September. Request for payment caps. Request came in to put a payment cap on high tunnels. Again, previously we had a cap on high tunnels that you got one high tunnel per contract. And in FY22, we just took the cap off. And that didn't work so well. And didn't anticipate that we'd have a contract with 8 high tunnels. And, so we're taking a hard look at this. And so we are going to put a payment cap on each contract. And so it isn't going to be that you're only eligible for one. But we don't have the new payment rates. We don't know what that payment cap is going to be, but it's probably will be based on the square footage. You have so much square foot of a high tunnel, that kind of thing. But we now have high tunnels, we have low tunnels, and so some combination. So we do intend to put a payment cap on that, and we'll calculate that once we get our payment rates. So we always talk about when we want to have our application cutoff dates and ranking cutoff dates. And I think at the last meeting, Connor put together a summary of the responses, and of course it's all over the place. But the majority of local work groups wanted like a November application cutoff date. And of course there's some wanted them sooner, some later, but what is kind of pretty much unanimous, at least amongst field staff, is no matter when you make the cutoff, make it the same. We don't want several cutoffs all over the place. So November 18th is kind of the winter date. That's going to be for EQIP, CSP, and for ASEP. All of those are going to be November 18th this year. So soon we'll get we'll get bulletins out and news releases on this. Again, they're all continual year-round sign-up periods, but these are going to be the dates to be considered for funding. Then the ranking deadlines, we're still discussing the best dates for that, but it will be January, February, kind of a time frame to have our applications assessed and ranked and be ready for funding early in 2023. Okay, so the Urban Ag Subcommittee, as Rob mentioned, we did meet, got that organized and met on August 26th. And I'm really excited for that. I mean, it's a good group. We've got a lot of work to do, and I think we got a good start. So our initial meeting was on the 26th. And just a real quick review. So what's the responsibilities? So they're advisory. They identify local urban ag needs, identify local barriers, what is it going to take to implement some of these practices and move forward on small scale agriculture, urban. We need to build a statewide partnership of experts. And I think we got a good start with our committee, and we'll maybe reaching out to a few other people to add to that committee. We use this committee to evaluate and view ongoing innovations, those kind of things, develop recommendations and outreach strategy. That's a huge task, is just getting the word out that this is available, through our programs and what's available and all of that. So how are we going to get that word out? Assess natural resource priorities. What's a priority within the urban ag arena? They'll advise the state conservationists on policies, support local pilot projects, missions, provide additional relevant assistance, all of that. So it's all rolled into that committee, like all of our subcommittees. So there were two takeaways from meeting on August 26th, and it was rushed. It was, to just say it bluntly, there were a few things we had to make decisions on so we could implement things in FY23. So there wasn't a lot of time for reflection and discussion, but we did it. There were two things that came from that committee. We reviewed the list of practices which are available for urban and small scale agriculture. That's one of the hurdles that we're kind of overcoming from the national level down. So, now we have practices where we can pay in square feet instead of acres. You've got to get these down to a scale that will fit, it's a small scale ag or urban. So after the committee, their recommendation was to adopt all of those eligible. We'll talk about that in a second. And wanted to set the application cutoff date for November 18th to align with the other application cutoff dates. But I think everybody recognizes that we can have multiple cutoff dates. So if we get the November 18th and we just haven't had time to promote and get the word out in that, then we very well may set another application cutoff date in spring. And we can do that with a 30-day announcement and come back with another. So that's on the table, and we'll definitely consider that. So this is a list of practices which are available. I say, these practices exist, on the large scale for the most part, but they have written scenarios, like I said, at the square foot level, and try to develop rates, which is going to match up. So that's a recommendation, but the reality is we have to look at, some of these practices, we don't even have the practice standard accepted in the state. We're going to have to get those. So we've got a lot of work to do there. The education and training curve is huge on this. You know, our field office staff, all of our staff, and we need to get trained up. You know, when do you use this practice? Where do you use the practice? How does it work? How do you design it? We've got to build all of that stuff. So, we're gonna review these practices and see, you know, which ones can we roll out realistically this year. You know, we don't want to put practices out there and make them available, and then, you know, our staff, they're not familiar with how to design it, what it is. And so, we probably will not adopt them all FY23. We're gonna take a hard look at what we can and what we can't. So that's it in a nutshell. So any questions? Anybody online? Okay, no questions in the chat.
Somebody's got their hand raised. George Cunningham.
Yeah, this is George Cunningham. I'm with the Sierra Club. Yeah, I would be interested in participating in that water quality subcommittee. How can that happen, if it can happen?
Yeah, so we'll make the note here, but if you would go ahead and just send me an email.
Okay.
Nominating yourself, brad.sompson@usda.gov.
Yeah, I've got your email. So yeah, okay, great. And then I don't remember seeing it. Do you have a final list of those that sit on the Urban Ag Committee?
Yes, I don't have it with me, but I can send it to you.
Okay, great, thanks.
Any other questions? All right. Well, nothing. I think Tammy is up next to get into our initiatives. Yeah.
Good afternoon. Again, I'm Tammy Timms, Programs Initiatives Coordinator for an NRCS position started a couple of years ago. And so I've been working mostly with Rcpp 18 since Rcpp became its own separate program, no longer under the umbrella of Aquifer CSP. So my responsibility then is to help coordinate some of the projects that we have. Before I get into the slides, though, I do want to note to those partners who have projects with us, Brad, you reminded me, we'll be reaching out to you, or the district conservationist in your project area will be contacting you to see if you want to use the same application cutoff of November 18th, which aligns well with the field offices, helps them move through their process a lot better, but you do have the option to flex that and have a different date than what we use for other programs. All right, so I'm just going to touch quickly on some of the Farm Bill 14 Rcpp projects. Those are under the, like I said, the old rules where they fall under the Aquifer CSP. I think that's not. Okay, so our two watershed projects are, they're just about ready to hit the ground. Just had some situations where when it goes through the watershed planning stage and goes through all of the checks, you know, the environmental checks and things like that, some of that takes some time. But both of these, the Wahoo Creek Water Quality Site 26 and 27 and the Papillion Creek sites, basically are in the watershed planning stage where it's being reviewed at NHQ, National Headquarters. The Wahoo Creek one is waiting for the final authorization. We expect that at any time so we can really get going on that final design and get the construction going. We did have to extend that project a year just to allow some time to work on and get that on the ground. So Papillion Creeks, see that it's at NHQ waiting for the first review comments. So once we hear back from that, go back to our tables, fix what we need, and then sit back. But the goal is to have the final design and construction started here yet in 2022, or at least in 2023, but that project is set to expire in 23. The other one that we have, is third and last one that we have under Farm Bill 14 is the divots and the pivots, number 1564, with the Upper Big Blue NRD as the lead partner on that one. Since I've last reported on this one, we do have the final easement done on closed on the WRE part. And then, yeah, and then the second parcel. So the very last part that we have to do with this project is with that final easement closing is just to do some of the restoration activities on there, and that'll probably be done through equip contract. So, but that contract is, or this project is set to expire in 23. We had to extend that a year to give us a little more time to finish that up. All right, now to the actual RCPP Farm Bill 18 projects. Resilient Futures for Nebraska Soils, that's the project that we have actively moving right now with the Nature Conservancy. We've been working on this one for 2 years now. And this is in the Upper Big Blue and the Central Platte Energy area. Watershed is the actual boundary. And as far as the success to date, and we're gonna, from what our end is we're doing the producer contracts along with the TNC's assistance, and the NRDs. But in fiscal year 21 obligations, you just kind of get an idea of where we're at. We did $545,000 plus over 20, and we call them land management or rental contracts. And then in fiscal year 22 here this summer, we obligated $567,000 towards 24 contracts with the producers. And to date, we've done payments on $136,000 worth plus. And the TNC held a producer kickoff event here just in August and had a really nice turnout. Again, with COVID, we were kind of on hold to have any kind of outreach activities, but now, thank goodness, we can start reaching out again and having in-person meetings. And so it was a very successful one that they had. And then one of the other parts of the project is for the Nature Conservancy to reach out to those producers who sign up for contracts with us to see who wants to participate in a possible soil carbon credit program. And right now through the ESMC, they have 3 of those producers who are actively participating. So just to kind of give you, I went back. Just to kind of give you an idea as far as the practices, we have the 3 practices are 328 conservation crop rotation, 329 no-till, and 340 cover crop. So we're seeing some acres really move in on those 3 practices. Cover crop nicely, 13,000 easily acres covered. And I just wanted to throw in a picture. Again, with COVID kind of letting up and letting us get to the field, and it's fun to get out there to the Buffalo County producer who's participating in the project to check the cover crops and see how successful they are. All right, another project we have is Cropland cover for soil health and wildlife. This is within the Rcpp and Parks Commission. And as far as success on that one, we just basically kicked that one off this year. We had $126,000 worth of obligations with producers, over 13 contracts. And already we've had some producers requesting payment because they've established their cover crop and done some access control. But just to give you an idea, we're looking at 1,400 acres right now from fiscal year 22. So we're really excited to kick off fiscal year 23 here this fall and really get this run along as well. The Ogallala Aquifer and Platte River Recovery Project. That was one that we have with the Central Platte NRD, and it's a renewal. So they had done it 5 years previously. I should mention the cover crop one that I just talked about too was also a renewal. But they were so successful in the last 5 years that they renewed and got new projects funded for the next 5 years. This one we put on hold in fiscal year 22. Just the the agreements and some of the other things just got put off hold long enough. And then with some of our software issues, they said, you know, let's really gear up this summer. And that way this fall, we can kick off and start having some sign up with producers and get the project going. So you'll see this one definitely coming into fruition here this fall. We'll start some of the announcements and get the word out. The Nebraska Forest Restoration Partnership. This is our alternative funding arrangement project, excuse me, which is a lot different from the classic in that the partner is the one who handles the technical assistance for the practice, most of it. And then they also handle the administration of the project. And I've got a note here on the upper right-hand corner. Adam Smith with the Nebraska Forest Service will be the key contact. In other words, he's the one who's basically administering the project. Of course, along with the NRCS Rcpp guidelines, but he is managing that project across the state. It's okay. It's okay. That's today. Right.
You got it?
So under those for the practices, you see the 666 forest stand improvement and 382 fence. That's going to be like a separate project component that Nebraska Forest Service is doing with the Nebraska Game and Parks Commission. And I know they've been gearing up this summer to really get that project off the ground and going. The 380, the 650, the 490, and the 612 practices, those are the ones that they are doing in conjunction with the NRD tree programs across the state. And that started last fall and went through the spring. And basically what we're doing there is through the project, our CPP project was kicking in additional, and it depends on which NRD, but generally 25% more to that producer to really encourage the planting of trees and windbreaks. So for right now, success to date, I know we have at least 13 applications that were ran through the NRD tree programs across the state that the Nebraska Forest Service is backing up with this NFRP. And so we'll soon be asking for us to reimburse them for what they reimburse those producers. Continuous signups are being accepted for both projects. So if anybody ever has any questions on that one, again, there's Adam's contact information as far as email. But even like through the NRDs or through those tree programs, contact us as well. And just a quick little map that hasn't changed, I think, from the last time I spoke with you folks. So. The Platte and Playa Wetland Protection RCPP is with the Ducks Unlimited, and we're hoping that we can really get moving on some easement activities here this fall. Still working on clarifying the different agreements that we need to have for that one, because again, RCPP is a lot different than what the other programs are out there for easements. But we'll be working on the ranking with the DU, and you'll start to see some more outreach activities going on with that project as the year goes on. Okay, so then just a couple little notes on RCPP is their the program portal. When RCPP 18 first came out, they really guided us to say, you know, partners are going to be a lot more involved with producing the agreements with us. In other words, they're going to go into this program portal software system and help develop those agreements, making the selections of the different criteria that they wanted to have for financial assistance, how they're going to do their match, their contribution letters, and all that kind of stuff. And then yesterday, I think all the partners got a letter from the national office just notifying the partners that, hey, due to some level of frustration with using the portal nationwide, they are now going to limit partners' use within the portal and make it more of an NRCS responsibility as far as doing those agreements, because it's just stumbled. It's been a stumbling block for a lot of partners. Partners will still be able to redo their payment requests in the portal, and still send their proposals through the portal, do their annual and final reports as well there, but it's just trying to put more of that responsibility on NRCS to make sure that agreement gets to that finish line a little quicker than what they have been, and just to be in charge of that negotiations. The partners will definitely always still have a say in what they want for that project, and as long as it falls within our policy and boundaries of the program. Doesn't affect the Farm Bill 14 projects at all. So, and they said that was going to take effect yesterday, and then we got an email this morning that said that didn't happen actually, so it's on hold. So right now, partners can still go in the portal and do what they want to do if they need to edit or make requests within the agreements themselves. But further notice will be sent from the national office to notify us for sure when. Okay, and then from the fiscal year 2022 Classic and AFA national funding opportunity results that they had. So nationwide, they selected 33 classic proposals and 8 alternative funding arrangements, and Nebraska did not have any proposals. The funds not used, okay, because usually they want to do half and half, or at least split that money half and half between those different types of funding. But since they felt that the alternative funding arrangement proposals that they got were not maybe to RCPP guidelines, or just weren't going to be the best for this time as far as what was proposed, there was $40 million basically left on the table. What do we do with that RCPP money? So what they've decided to do was to come out with these grants for nutrient management, the 590 that we have, practice standard, and do up to 7 awards, but they were only for critical conservation areas. And except for prairie grasslands, which is what we are under the CCA, and that's just because that resource concern for prairie grasslands isn't related directly with nutrient management. So, but well, that just kind of gives you an idea of, okay, now before they said RCPP wasn't going to be grant money, now they're kind of moving towards that with the so we'll see where they go with that. The Water Smart program, I'll just touch on this a little bit too. Again, this equip Water Smart is just basically a supplemental payment for areas, irrigation systems, water districts across the nation to back up and support some of the producers in those areas. And so that's just a graph of what the equip Water Smart backs up with the Bureau of Reclamation's Water Smart program. In the middle, Republican NRD, just kind of comparing last year's to this year's funding and the number of contracts that were funded. So 21, we had 470,000 with 15 contracts, but in this last year, $10,000 obligated on 1 contract. And then in 2023, it's expired, so we won't have any funding there. And then in the upper Republican, we had 18,000 in obligations, in 21 with 1 contract, in 22, 534,000 on 18 contracts, and then in 2023, as Brad had alluded, we got $250,000 that are to be decided on as far as allocated. So we'll see what kind of contracts we get, the numbers of those. And then the NWQI, as far as results for fiscal year 22. The Brazil Creek groundwater management area, again, that's in the lower Elkhorn NRD, Lewis and Clark NRD, upper Elkhorn NRD. Fiscal year 22, we ended up with 25 contracts obligating around $699,000. And this just gives you kind of a breakdown. I think last time we did a chart for you, we just showed you what the 2019 through 2021 was. And then I just added columns just to see that, so you can see the 2022 results of what that sign up was like in that area. For Turkey Creek in the lower Big Blue NRD area, we had 1 contract for 22,000, a little over, I should say. And then same thing here, just kind of added on from where we left off the 19 through 21 signups and what 2022 added on to that. Big Sandy Creek, the little blue NRD, 1 contract with around a $60,000 obligation. You can see that a lot of the practices just focus on the irrigation, water management, public plant, 1 sprinkler system, structure for water control. Wahoo Creek's in the existing planning stage yet for that watershed, so no money has been obligated to that area. That wraps it up, and I just wanted to say thank you to everybody. Thank you to all the partners. we don't know for sure what fiscal year 23 is going to look like for proposals. Time will tell, but just wanted to let you know that if anybody has a proposal that they're considering or wanting to look into for possible fiscal year 23 funding, is to contact me, let me know. And we can just kind of get the ball rolling and at least let you know what the program is about generally. And then what you and we could bring to the table and maybe create for a really successful project. Questions?
Okay, thanks, Tammy. So next up, we have Jeff Nichols, going to give a Gpgi initiative update. So Jeff, are you ready? We're going to try to get.
Yeah, let me know when you can see my screen.
Oh, we can see it. So go ahead.
Okay, well, thanks for this opportunity to give you all an update of the Nebraska Great Plains Grassland Initiative. Again, I'm Jeff Nichols. I'm the State Rangeland Management Specialist for NRCS, and I work out of the North Platte office, but have statewide responsibilities. So just to give you a summary of what we've done here over the past year and fiscal year 2022 with Gpgi. As Brad has shown, we've got a map that identifies 4 focal areas for this initiative in the state. And then also we've held an awareness training for our employees and our partners in the fall of 2021 in October. As Brad mentioned, the first year they allocated $1.2 million from the wind fund pool for this initiative. And then we also had some EQIP planning workshops there via Teams in January of 2022 to get our planners acquainted with how to rank these applications and get them through to the contracting process or through the contracting process. Brad showed you this map, but these are the 4 focal areas that we have. The Verdigris Brazil up in the northeast. We did add some area to that for this year, for 23 going forward, that connects there on that upper west side, I guess you would say, to the Sandhills focal area. The reason for that was there was some intact grasslands in that area with some good cultural will among the landowners and the partners to do some projects in that area. So we wanted to get that included in this Gpgi as an opportunity for those landowners. The other areas, of course, are the Sandhills, the Lusk Canyons there in southeast Lincoln County, and then the mixed grass prairie grasslands there in southwest Nebraska. Okay, so through the Environmental Quality Incentives Program, or EQIP, we had first cutoff was last fall for taking applications, and as I mentioned, 1.2 million was allocated. Of those applications in our workload priority system, applications that are anchored to intact grasslands or established cores with multiple landowners receive some favor in the ranking process. Also, applications that were working with partner organizations received some favor in the ranking process. The primary practices that were utilized through this initiative were the prescribed burning practice, or the 338. Although this practice was not required, it was encouraged through the ranking, and we're trying to, do that for the purpose of, we feel like prescribed fire can have the greatest impact on the largest amount of acres. But the other primary reason that the prescribed burning practice is important is because it is the one practice that has the greatest impacts on all the phases of encroachment of the eastern red cedar tree. So it will, you know, kill seed on the ground, early recruitment phase of encroachment, all the way up through the transition phase. And so prescribed burning, we feel like is one of the primary practices that we'll use in the future, but it is not required in areas that the cultural will is not there among landowners to do that yet. The other thing would be the prescribed grazing practice that is utilized, and that is for setting aside land to build the fine fuel load for those that are trying to do prescribed fire. Probably the most popular one that is used throughout most all the contracts would be some level of the brush management practice, and this is basically mechanical removal of trees, although it can be some chemical. Very little of the chemical is been used, but that is an option for landowners. But this is paid based upon various levels of the canopy cover for the brush that is out there. And then the last thing was a new practice that was added in fiscal year 2022 for this Gpgi initiative, and it's the pest management practice. This practice pays a per acre payment for up to 3 years. There is a $10,000 a year payment limitation, so a total of $30,000 in any given contract that you could go to this particular practice. But this practice is intended to be more of the monitoring that would come in after some of these other practices have been applied, which basically is trying to work with the landowners to, you know, keep it after they've applied practices like brush management or prescribed burning, to stay on top of monitoring these areas to keep the trees, you know, out as they come back, which they all eventually will if there is a seed supply in place. Now, we do recommend that removal of all seed producing trees be as a criteria of taking this practice, but there are some exceptions to that. Some of those exceptions would be, you know, functional windbreaks, things like that are needed for the operation of that farm or ranch, or sometimes there's some inaccessible areas that are on the breaks of rivers and streams and things like that that are just not feasible to get all those seed producing trees. And so those types of exceptions are built into the process of taking this practice. Okay, the next, I went to the previous. There we go. So this is a map that basically shows the 4 target or focal areas. Within those 4 areas, we had 21 contracts total for approximately 18,000 acres and approximately $700,000 obligated. So the overall average cost per acre, if we just took that total obligation divided by total acres across all the contracts, was $38.22 per acre. So if we break it down by focal area, in the Verdigris Brazil, we had 7 contracts for 3,500 acres, total of $234,000 obligated. Average cost per acre on those projects was $66.10. In the Nebraska Sandhills, we had 5 contracts that were funded for a little over 6,000 acres, approximately $228,000 obligated, for an average project cost of $36.51 per acre. And in the Loess Canyons focal area, we had 6 contracts that were funded for 4,700 acres, approximately $177,000 spent for an average project cost of $37.55 per acre. And then the last focal area, we had 3 contracts in the Southwest Mixed Grass Prairie for 3,800 acres, approximately $61,000 with an average project cost of $15.96 per acre. And so that kind of summarizes the EQIP that took place for last year, fiscal year 2022. We're anticipating, the one thing that we noticed about that is it was still basically more of a random approach to the conservation. And with this Great Plains Grassland Initiative, what we really want to do is have more of a concentrated approach to targeting these areas of intact grasslands and then grouping these projects together so that we can have a larger impact on the landscape rather than all these random project locations scattered all over the place. And so one thing that we came up with that we've just recently implemented is we've got this new NRCS Gpgi cadre. And the purpose of this is, well, we had the supervisors, the DCs, district conservationists that have field offices that are in these focal areas, designate some employees that could dedicate more of their time towards this woody encroachment issue. And so the purpose of this Gpgi cadre then and these individuals is to lead this more intentional effort on woody encroachment, also to foster collaboration with the partners, work closely with them on projects and with the landowners, to inform, promote, motivate, and guide and facilitate landowner awareness and action, and then also to increase capacity for prescribed burning in Nebraska. So a couple things that we're just doing for promotion and awareness of the Gpgi that's going to be available for this year, for 2023, to try to increase the amount. As you've noticed, we had 1.2 million allocated last year or in 22, and we've got the same amount allocated for this year. We only spent approximately 700,000 of that last year. Part of that was due to, just kind of being late getting out the gate on this as far as having everything organized and set up, and didn't have a lot of time to promote it before that cutoff in the fall. So this year we've got more time to work with, and this cadre is going to be working on, along with our partners, holding some landowner meetings to get some information out to landowners on availability of not only EQIP, but some partner funding that might be available. And then also one of the efforts is sending out some mailings with postcard and informational flyers. And then at these landowner meetings, providing them with the information they need about the different program incentives that are out there. So with that, that's kind of a quick summary of the Great Plains Grassland Initiative for fiscal year 22. And I'll just leave you with that. Are there any questions? Any questions from anybody?
I have a question from George Cunningham. He's got his hand raised.
Yeah, how do landowners get a hold of you for getting on mailing list or getting flyers, things like that? How's that accomplished?
What we are using to generate the mailing list for like our postcards and things like that, we're working with the partners to do that, but we are able to gather the mailing list through the Farm Service Agency of landowners within those targeted areas, so that we can target those that we want to for individual meetings or things like that.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Thanks, everyone.
Okay, well, thank you, Jeff. So next up, Jenny Prenicil is going to give us an update on our Quail Initiatives. So take it away, Jenny.
All right, thank you. So I'm Jenny Prenicil. I'm the Conservation Ag Coordinator for Pheasants Forever here in Nebraska. And I'm kind of the point person for this fund pool here, the Northern Bobwhite Grasslands and Savannas Working Lands for Wildlife Initiative. Go ahead. So real briefly, you know, why do we care so much about an initiative for bobwhite quail? Well, there's a lot of good reasons why. They have a very wide distribution among a lot of the eastern and southeastern portions of the U.S. They're very tied in with a lot of habitat edges that come with a lot of our working lands, whether it be cropland edges or pasture lands. In many parts of the country, they're known as a firebird, which really shows that they're really tied to prescribed fire. They show up after fire events, likely due to the flush of early successional habitat. And they're also very culturally significant. A lot of people, there's a long history and a deep culture of people hunting the bobwhite quail. And through that, it brings a lot of economics to rural America. People go to these small towns, spend money on food, gas, hotels, and those things in pursuit of the bobwhite quail. And just to reiterate, good management practices that benefit bobwhite quail also tend to benefit beef and cattle production. Connor? Just like a lot of our other grassland birds, or just birds in general in the news, if you've been paying attention, there's been a decrease in habitat and just bird numbers in general, and bobwhite quail are not spared of that, although they're still doing better than some of our other groups. Recognizing, yes, there was a larger effort to create this Working Lands for Wildlife bobwhite quail, focusing on their grassland and savanna habitats. And through this framework, there's been a total of about 25 states jumping in, doing a very large multi-state effort, targeting the habitats and working lands that bobwhite quail are found on. And Nebraska is just one of those. Go ahead, Connor. So what are the habitat components that we're looking for when we're trying to manage for bobwhite quail? The first would be nesting habitat, someplace, you know, they can start to raise their young. The second would be broodering habitats. So that's going to look a little bit different than nesting habitat. So if you're not familiar with what a baby quail, the size of a quail when they just hatch, just look at your thumb. That's about all the bigger they are. And try to imagine being a little thumb trying to move through the grass. It's not super easy. So we need a little bit of space. And the third big component are woody covers. So things like shrub thickets. We call those covey headquarters because the coveys of quail will oftentimes use those as escape cover and then hiding in those during adverse weather events. And a big important part, go ahead one more time, is within those covey headquarters is we want bare ground component, because again, you know, they're not very big birds. They don't get moved through grass very well, so we need that open loose area underneath of these to function properly for a covey of quail. Just like everywhere else, there's always challenges for wildlife. And some of the challenges that we see with providing more habitat for quail is in our ranges is a lot of it is invasive and non-desirable species. A lot of those being eastern red cedar. If you've driven around any parts of southeastern Nebraska, Sericea lespedeza is another big issue. It creates a monoculture, which just is not ideal for quail. And then smooth brome. Smooth brome creates, again, a monoculture. It's very thick, and especially for broods, you know, little quail chicks, they really just can't utilize those areas. And some of this loss of habitats due to land use changes or just encroachment of these undesirable species. And then also just degradation of our other intact habitats like oak woodlands, grasslands, etc. So when we in Nebraska decided, some of the partners, to jump in and be part of this multi-state effort, we had to narrow down what our focus area was going to be. And so we looked at a variety of factors. Some of those looking at what is the best potential for bobwhite quail in general. Where do we historically have strong footholds of quail in the state? Where do we still have strong quail places? And then also overlapping with all of partners' existing initiatives. So like Game Parks has some targeted quail efforts down there, or biologically unique landscapes. So we just look in where we have all of this stuff overlapping. Go ahead. And so we narrowed it down to about a 12 county area in southeast Nebraska. And this is where we decided to focus these efforts. So the goals for this initiative here in Nebraska is to address those aggressive and invasive species on the whatever habitat we have in place, as well as planting field borders or otherwise on crop ground edges. And, you know, those invasive species being eastern red cedar, smooth brome, might be a honey locust, a lot of different things. And also we want to create a fire culture down in the southeast that isn't quite where we would like it to be. Having that regular prescribed fire helps keep these undesirable species in check. It benefits quail. It'll benefit livestock as well. These are the applicable practices that we're looking at using. And again, there's some combination of all of these things. Could be used on a variety of land uses, whether that be our range lands, our crop grounds, associated ag lands. We really want to try and do a little bit for anybody that wants to do something for quail on those properties. I'm working with Connor to get these all finalized and stuff, so we're working there. Another big thing that came with Nebraska jumping on this initiative was the ability to build capacity. And so there became money available to add another biologist down in our focus area, and we went ahead and chose to do so. So we hired a quail, or their title is Quail Conservation Delivery Specialist. Jared is his name. He was hired on the end of July. He's been on a month now, and he's already been out in the field trying to meet with landowners, promote this initiative. And we placed him in the Tecumseh field office. Johnson County has a couple of wildlife management areas, so it felt like that'd be a really good just anchor point to start and grow the core and go places from there. There's also a couple other farm bill biologists down in the area to help them get up and running. We've got good support from Game and Parks and also really good leadership with NRCS offices down there. So we felt confident that this is going to be a good place for him to go. And we also went ahead and sent out a postcard mailer here within the last month. Those should be hitting the mailboxes here if they haven't already. Again, trying to promote that initiative, give our new person some contacts to go after. And so we're really hopeful that seems to work other places, so we're trying to get to. And there's my star for our new person. Part of this effort is there's going to be a required monitoring, and this is going to be standardized among all of the states that are part of this initiative. And I just got an email this morning about the specific protocol about what this is looking like. So I didn't have time to dig into those details exactly, so I can't go super in depth, but it's going to comprise of a combination of spring whistle counts when they're during the breeding season, maybe some fall covey counts. You can listen in and get some numbers that way. Also some vegetation surveys, before and after implementing our practices. And then there's also the potential to use acoustic recording units. So these are just like little boxes that get sent out there and they record bird songs. And they're going to compare that data with the quail whistle counts and see if there's any differences. All this data is going to be sent to the University of Georgia. They're going to be collecting and analyzing all of the data. And so that's an agreement that's been made at the higher levels of this initiative and NRCS and University of Georgia. And so really, we're just going to collect the data here, send it to them, and they'll help us out that way. And then there's been talk about maybe using cameras as well. Like I said, I just got the email this morning about the protocols, and we're hopefully going to have some meetings here moving forward to talk about what that looks like. And this monitoring aspect of this is another big reason why we went ahead and added another person down in the southeast. This person is going to pretty much be in charge of the monitoring of these programs. That way we're not tying up our other staff, NRCS, PF, and otherwise, who already have workload, and that's important, to keep moving forward that way. So that was a really quick summary. It's kind of in just the infancy stages. So we'll see how it blooms and blossoms and grows from there.
Okay, any questions for Jenny? All right. Well, thank you, Jenny. Pretty good. All right, so next on the agenda is FSA review and Grassland CRP state priority zones. Levane, are you
Yep.
ready to go? Okay.
Yes, I am. Can you see my screen?
Maybe.
Pardon?
Yeah. Yep, we see it. Yep.
Okay. I'm gonna make sure I get it started in there, slide presentation. I have a couple things mainly to go over. One major thing I'd like to address with the group today is our Grasslands priority zone that under our CRP, our Grassland CRP sign up started back, I believe, probably in around 2015, and that is the last time we looked at our priority zones. And what these priority zones do is give those offers in certain counties an extra 15 points to get more enrollment in those areas where they're limited on points. So National gave us an opportunity to go ahead and look at these again. I also am going to go over just kind of an overview, a quick overview of our CRP signups, and then address the fires in EC, what we have, which counties had requested for ECP assistance for fires. So we'll start out with Grasslands.
Hey, Levane, it's Jana.
Yes.
Your screen showing is like the presenter view, just so you know.
Oh,
you might
really?
have to switch it. Yeah, it has the presenter view on it.
Let me. That's not it. Let's do end slideshow, and I will do. I don't know if I know how to get that off though, Jana.
Levane.
Yeah.
Yeah. Back there, go back to the screen that you were on there.
Display end the slideshow. Okay.
And go your bottom right.
Oh, I got it. Thank you. Thank you very much. Is that better?
It didn't work either, but
It might be because you're sharing you might have to stop sharing your screen and share again and pick whatever screen your slides are on. I'm guessing that might be what it's doing. We could still see it. It's just kind of hard because it's smaller.
I got it. I agree. So let me try that. And I'm going to pick this screen, but I'm going to move my slides over. Now can you see it, or am I wrong?
That looks better, yep.
Is that better? Okay.
Yep, much better.
All right, thank you. Thanks for your patience, everybody. I apologize for that. Once again, like I said, Grassland priority zones gives that extra boost, extra points to those producers that submit an offer under the Grassland sign up. And notice CRP 980 gave us that opportunity to review those again. We could look at our existing ones and go with those. We could modify. We basically had an open rein on what we wanted to do. The other thing they did change is when we did this in 2015, we really focused on land that was close to cities, that was being developed into housing or cities. So we wanted to keep those grazing lands out there and not converted over to, like I said, housing developments or commercial use. So that was kind of the focus, was back in when we set up these grazing grasslands priority zones. But they've changed really what we focus on, and I'll go over that here shortly. So that's another reason that gave us the opportunity to really look at these and address the grazing lands and how we want to promote those grazing lands, and we want to make sure that we have given those producers all the opportunity they can to get those enrolled. So like I stated before, our grassland CRP zones, in addition to our wildlife zones, automatically give those producers some extra points, 15 points under the ranking factors under each of these to be able to get those extra points when they can't meet the full ranking criteria or a ranking score. And the ranking scores are about an average of a 70 is what we figured, 65 to 70 in the past signups and this signup as well. So sometimes it's hard to get that in certain areas of the state. Our zones are limited to 25% of the total acres of hay, pasture, and rangeland for the state. So our total acres under those are 27,369,921. So we have to take 25% of that. So that's 6,842,480 is what we have to stay within under these counties under these zones. And the county has to be a whole county. We can't do partial counties or hucks or anything like that. So we have to look at the full county. So sometimes we put in more acres and we may not use the whole county, but we also have to look at giving those counties an opportunity and where those grazing lands are to get a higher enrollment, which Nebraska does have a good enrollment, but we also want to give those producers that opportunity if we can. The deadline for us to provide this proposal to our national office, because it has to be reviewed and approved by them before we can go ahead and use it for our next sign up, which will be in fiscal year 2023. So whenever they announce the next sign up next year, then if we all agree on these priority zones that I'm presenting to you today, then this is what we'll use in our next sign up. Okay, the factors that National had asked us to really look at was are listed here as follows: the grazing lands, which are subject to woody encroachment, also special significance, tribal lands, historically underserved communities, acres where wildlife can protect or enhance, and then the proximity of public grasslands or native prairie preserves. What we considered, and when we looked at counties, we wanted them to meet at least one or more of the following resource-based criteria. So our grazing lands, we wanted them to support native tallgrass prairie. We also wanted to identify as a biologically unique landscape, which is part of the Nebraska Natural Legacy Project and our Wildlife Action Plan. We also prioritized with NRCS's Great Plains Grassland Initiative to suppress woody species invasion. And then we also looked at the popular game species, such as greater prairie chicken, sharp-tailed grouse, and redneck pheasant. We again looked at tribal lands. We went and looked at what is expiring, what acres are expiring under the general sign-up, and then locations, like I stated, where past signups for grasslands were strong, had strong interest, but they had low or no acceptance. So we wanted to look at those and give those opportunities as well. This is the current priority zone. So we had the western part, and there's always a really good signups in our western part of the state. And then we also looked at, like I said, keep in mind when we set these up, we were kind of more towards the cities or towns that had was converting some of that grazing lands over to housing or other development, where we wanted to keep that grazing lands in place and not removed from being utilized. So that is what we're looking at now. Our next, it would be nice if I would have had these side by side, and I didn't. And then here is our new proposal. So we basically took this area out here, this here, and then kind of went through here a little bit. And like I said, we also looked at enrollments, how many offers we had. And I know our partners, Rich or Eric, if you're on, will talk about what areas we looked at because of the initiatives that I had brought up as far as wildlife, the woody, and also our native grass covers. Here are some of these areas. I'll kind of switch back and forth here. Like here we had Box Butte. We took them out, and Banner. Box Butte has a really good sign up and higher points where they didn't really need the extra points to get enrolled. And I believe we took out Perkins County, Banner County, and then we added Franklin down in here. Took out, this was all out. So like I said, we kind of took this area where there wasn't much enrollment, and then the city like Washington, Douglas, Sarpy, there's not much land there, grazing lands there to even offer. So we didn't want to take up those acres away from other areas that could utilize it. The one big county, as you can see, is Lincoln County we added, and that was a huge acres, but we had a lot of interest there that we had, I don't even know if we had any acceptance in that county. And they actually requested and had some concerns, so they had inquired about what they can do or what we could do to offer those producers a chance to get an offer accepted under our Grasslands program. Pat,
Hey,
did you have
Levine.
something?
Yeah, I was just gonna throw this in there. Levain's right. We really looked at places that had high interest but low acceptance. And on the flip side, what we also looked at was we looked at these counties like Box Butte who traditionally get a lot accepted, and we took a look at what they scored, and we reduced their score based on those priority points, and they still qualified to enroll in Grasslands as the history showed. So some of these western counties that we removed, which are heavy grassland counties, they were qualifying without the additional points, and that's why we removed them from that section.
All right, thanks, Pat. Before I go further, that's pretty much what I'm going to propose on the grassland priority areas. If anybody has any questions before I go further into the rest of my presentation, or if any of our partners want to add anything at this time, I think this is a good place to do that. And if not, I'm going to go ahead down here. You can see that our 25%, we're under that 25%. This is our 25% that we could go here. I'm sorry, the 6,842,480. And with all the counties that we have there, we come pretty close to that 25%. So we pretty much filled as much. So, and some of them we did add to fill up in the end. So we didn't want to leave any acres. We did go back and added a few more counties that would fill up that 64,000 or 50,000 acres that we were missing. So towards the end, we just went ahead and added which counties were close to that acres to get closer to our 25% limitation. So if there's no further questions, I'm going to go ahead and proceed with the rest of the presentation. But if you do have further questions at the end, we'd be welcome to take those. One thing under this year, the Grasslands program, our sign up was April 4th to May 13th, but our ranking criteria, which it does take a ranking by national office, and by the time they made that decision and pushed it out to us to go and start the planning process, we're not going to be able to meet those plans because there's a lot of environmental reviews we have to go over too, especially if somebody wants to put a water development in or a water facility. That's going to take ground disturbance. That's going to take a little longer for us. So we inquired about interim plans. We don't always like to use these, but this gives us a better opportunity of not being rushed to just not do a good job with that producer. So National did provide us with interim plans to go ahead and use those and do the full-blown conservation plan by December 16th. So NRCS has until September 16th. If you got the previous PowerPoint presentation, that had September 9th on it. We just got this last Friday, and it's, kind of towards the end of the day that they moved it to another week. So NRCS does have till September 16th to get the interim plans completed and then do the full-blown conservation plan by December 16th then. If that one thing that is good about the interim plans, you always think, God, I'm signing something I'm not sure I'm going to agree with down the road. Once again, that producer still has an opportunity when they do review that final conservation plan. They can either terminate their contract or go forward with that contract. If they terminate that contract because they don't agree with the plan and it really doesn't work with their grazing plan, then we would not assess any liquidated damages, and they're totally out of that contract with no ramifications to them. General sign up, you might have saw this last month when we talked, and we might have not had all the acres there, but in Nebraska, our offers were 67,209 for the general sign up, and then number of offers are 989. We had almost 59,000 acres accepted with 857 offers accepted. So we had an 87% acceptance rate, which is really good for us on general sign up. And these contracts will start October 1 of 2022. Our continuous CRP sign up, which is sign up 57, that's an ongoing sign up, except for our re-enrollment offers. Those had to be submitted by August 5th. And re-enrollment's effective date will be 10/1 of 2022. And those offers that have new land and just new land can be submitted anytime, and that effective date is looked at as the month following approval, unless they defer it up to 6 months if they choose to. Under continuous, the crop has to be harvested before we can have a start date on that contract. So on these new lands going in, we won't be starting that contract. So if they've enrolled it today, we have approval date of today, their start date could start October 1, but if the crop's not out of the ground, then we would have to defer that till the crops are out of the ground. So say November or December. So that's how that works. And this is our Grassland CRP that I just talked about, 204. Acres we had offered were 633,169. Number of offers are 1,728. The total acres accepted were 417,236.5, and with 1,201 offers. So 66% acceptance on those as well. So we had some good results. And I think by doing these, changing these priority zones will also give us a higher enrollment as well. And these contracts will start 10/1 of 2022. This is just kind of a report of what we provide to NRCS and for partners to kind of help them and assist them, but it's only as good as what our counties will do. They're supposed to be moving all of these over to submit for plan. So it just kind of gives you an overview of here is the offers we started with for each sign up. So there's our general sign up, continuous 57. Our heli, which is our EI of 20 or greater, that is considered a continuous sign up, as well as our clear 30. CREP is also considered a continuous in our farmable wetlands. They just categorize those separately to keep a better record of those. But hopefully by next time we meet, we'll have an overview of where we're at from this year's on all our enrollments. And this takes you to our current counties approved for ECP. I think the last time we reported, we had everybody listed on here except for Brown, Blaine, and Rock County. We added them. So we have 10 counties that had requested for wildfires due to the disaster. And we do emergency conservation assistance with them to help in any way that the fires that damaged what was damaged out there. Sorry. ECP is our conservation reserve program that assists with funding and technical assistance to rehabilitate farmland damaged by natural disasters. It's not a compensation. It's not to compensate participants for non-farmland or buildings, but it does assist in restoring productive agricultural capacity to damaged land. And under our fires, we have all the practices here, but under the fires, the three practices that we saw that came in were EC1, removing debris from farmland. So it's like removing the fence, removing the posts that got burnt down so they can go and build new fence. And that's what EC3 is, replace or repair permanent fences. And then we also had the damage to field windbreaks and farmsteads that will assist in building those windbreaks and farmsteads back. And I believe that's all I have, unless we have any further questions. If not, I will pass it on to you guys. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Lorraine. All right, we now move on to the agenda. If we have any partner updates, any partners out there that would like to share any updates with the group, we'll start here in in our space here first, and then we'll go virtual. So anyone that has any updates that you'd like to share with us or share with the group? About online, anyone virtually that would like to provide any updates? Okay. Well, that's what we had on the agenda today. So a few things I want to share. Thank you very much for your participation. And on the agenda that was emailed out at the bottom, there's a listing of all the future dates, meetings. So the next one coming up is December 1st, and then we have the dates set for in March, June, September, December of 2023. So plenty of time to get them on your calendar. So just to recap a few things that I observed over today's meeting, with Brad, it's important to recognize that the local work group is vitally important, and the feedback that we take it serious, and we dig in and we go with all the different inputs. So I wanted to share with partners that we appreciate that feedback in the local work group process. We'll continue to use that process. And so I wanted to share that. Tammy, great overview with all the different projects going on with Rcpp, and I think I'm still learning each day on different projects that we've got going on in initiatives. So that's very exciting. Jeff online, thanks for your support and helping lead the effort to get the cadre stood up, and the training that we recently had with our employees. That's going to be exciting here in the year ahead. Jenny, it's this targeted approach with the quail habitat, I think will be exciting to see how that goes, and also how we can involve our local NRCS staff down in that area as well. So that's just learned something new. I think we all learned something new with that presentation, so that's great. And Levain, want to share that thanks for your help with us. FSA, we have a great relationship with FSA, and between the disasters, going back and forth with policy and trying to interpret that, and also with this Grassland CRP workload, we really appreciate your efforts on that. So with that, I believe we can wrap up for the day. Any final closing comments, questions before we end the day? All right.